Good evening, friends. I welcome you all to the Hindu and the Businessline editorial analysis on June 11th, 2022. Today, the first editorial analysis, as part of the first editorial analysis, I am going to discuss the complex process of the election of the President of India. I will explain how the President of India is elected. From now on, you will have no doubts regarding the election to the presidential position in India. Today, I will explain in a very clear language the arithmetics behind the presidential election. Come, let us discuss. Friends, in the 2017 election, as you can see from the screen, the presidential election was held and the members of the legislative assemblies from 29 states and the union territories of Delhi and Puducherry participated. The union territories of Delhi and Puducherry, the MLAs were eligible for electing the president as per the 1992 Constitutional Amendment Act. 2022 presidential election, MLAs from 28 states will be participating and from the union territories of Delhi and Puducherry as usual. The number of states have been reduced from 29 states to 28 states as per the Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Act 2019. The legislative constitutional sanction for Jammu and Kashmir Union territories will be done later. Hence, the Union territory of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh presently are not eligible to elect the President of India. The constitutional amendments with regard to that is pending. We calculate the value of one MLA's vote. It is by dividing the population of the state by MLAs in the total number of MLAs in the state, the whole divided by 1000. For example, in Kerala, there are 2 crore 13 lakhs 47,000 and 375 population who are eligible to be voted, and there are 140 MLAs. As per our equation, the 2 crore 13 lakhs 47,000 and 375 is divided by 140. The whole divided by 1000 gives 152. So the value of vote of one MLA from Kerala is 152. Coming to the case of Uttar Pradesh has 8 crores 38 lakhs 49,000 and 905 voters, and Uttar Pradesh has 403 MLAs. And applying the equation, we get the value of the vote of one MLA from Uttar Pradesh is 208. Let us take one more example. The case of Sikkim. Sikkim has 2 lakhs 9,843 voters and it has 32 MLAs. Applying our equation, we get 7 as the value of the vote of each MLA from Sikkim. So, like this, combined vote share of states of all the MLAs comes to 5 lakhs 43,231. Friends, as we know, the elected MPs are also participating in the presidential election voting. There are 776 elected MPs in India. How do we calculate the vote of one MP? The value of one MP's vote is the equation where the combined vote share of MLAs from all the 28 states is divided by the total number of MPs in India, elected MPs in India. As we have calculated, the combined vote share of all the MLAs in India is 5,43,231, and if we divide the total number of MPs 776, we get the figure 700. So the value of one MP's vote is 700 and is fixed. Unlike the value of the vote of each MLA, there is no difference in the value of each MP's vote. The value of MLA's vote differs from state to state, as I explained. The value of vote of one MLA from UP we calculated as different, and from Sikkim it is 7. From Kerala it is 152. However, in case of MPs, it is fixed at 700. One MP elected from Kerala will have 700 as the value of vote, and one MP elected from Uttar Pradesh will have the same value of vote as 700. So, let us calculate the combined vote share of all the MPs in India. It is by multiplying value of one MP's vote into total number of MPs in India, elected MPs in India. That is, value of one MP's vote is 700 into the total number of MPs in India is 776, and the combined vote share of all the MPs in India come to 5,43,200. It is almost equal to the combined vote share of all the MLAs in India. In most of the cases, combined vote share of all the MLAs in India is equal to combined vote share of all the MPs in India. For deciding the winner in the presidential election, which is conducted by single transferable vote of proportional representation, the equation of quota is fixed. The quota is equal to total number of MPs vote added by total number of MLAs vote, the whole divided by 2, and the result of which will be added to 1. Let us see how this quota is calculated in our case, in India's case. The total number of MPs vote, combined vote value of MPs votes is 5,43,200, and combined vote of all the MLAs is 5,43,231. Whole divided by 2, it comes to 5,43,216, and 1 is added. So, the quota is resulting in 5,43,217. The candidate who gets this magic figure will win the presidential election, my dear friends. My dear friends, the next article I am going to discuss is restoration. The editorial discusses the Sri Lankan finance minister's resignation from the government. Sri Lanka, we know, is in a greater economic crisis, and recently the new prime minister has taken charge. Ranil Wickremesinghe has taken charge as the new prime minister of Sri Lanka. The whole Sri Lanka is embroiled in a political as well as the economic crisis. When the finance minister of Sri Lanka has resigned now, it has thrown the country into a little bit difficult position. However, what is the reason for the finance minister's resignation is that the new Prime Minister is going to bring back the 2019 constitutional amendment. As per the 2019 constitutional amendment, which the new Prime Minister Vikramasinghe is going to bring about, will stipulate the dual citizenship persons to be refrained away from the administration. The finance minister of Sri Lanka is having dual citizenship. He is having another citizenship as US citizenship. So, having the US citizenship, he cannot continue as the finance minister if the constitutional amendment of 2019 is brought in. Friends, the next editorial I am going to discuss is titled India is not the fastest growing economy. The recent provisional estimates of national income has been published. It is called provisional estimates because it is based upon certain figures. The final figures are yet to come. The growth is projected to be, in real terms, it is 8.7%, and in nominal terms, it is termed as 19.5%. The article goes on to explain that these figures are based upon the organized sector's contribution. The unorganized sector is not being considered in these estimates. The unorganized sector has lots of problems, lots of downturns from the COVID affected pandemic. Such unorganized sectors evaluation is never being done. Even in the final estimate to be released, never has government done any kind of evaluation of the unorganized sector's contribution. The unorganized sector is in a very big difficulty. It never figures the final figure of GDP in the India's projection. This is a very unfortunate thing is what the article is saying all about. The article also lashes out the inflationary figures being contributing to the present kind of nominal GDP growth being projected. The inflation figures are hovering at a very high rate, and therefore the nominal GDP growth, there is a difference of more than 10 between the real GDP growth of 8.7% and the 19.5% GDP growth being projected in nominal terms. The real GDP is without the effect of inflation, and the nominal GDP is taking into consideration the inflation factors, my dear friends. And how this GDP is coming, my dear friends. In 2020, in the initial quarters of 2020, there was a negative GDP growth each quarter, and that formed the base for the year on year projections of the next year. And the estimates are based upon the previous year's figures. That is, the COVID affected negative growth has affected, and it was in the negative territory. The growth was in the negative territory that helped to have a greater percentage of 8.7% real GDP growth in the present year is what the article is saying all about. If the if the figures, the negative quarters of the base year 2020-21 is not taken into account, the article is saying there is just 1.5% growth in India's GDP. That shows that India is definitely not the fastest growing economy. The 8.7% is only because the last year, pandemic induced year, had been in the negative territory. And what can be discerned from the March 2022 quarter 4 figures is that the GDP is just growing at a quarterly figure of 4.1%. And that quarterly figure is being compared with the previous quarter 4 2021 figures. 2022 March quarter 4 figures are compared with the 2021 March figures, and that has been responsible for the positive GDP growth now at this level. Till quarter 3, 5% was the average GDP growth in India for the first 3 quarters. How it has come in the last year, the GDP growth for the first 3 quarters have been in the negative territory. The article is a very beautiful explanation of the real comparison between the COVID induced pandemic years GDP growth and how the present positive GDP growth has been clocked for India by the provisional estimates. And what distorts the projection, what distorts the figures is that the only organized sectors contribution is being taken into account and the unorganized sectors are being omitted. The unorganized sectors figures are never taken, and this is just distorting the picture, the whole picture of 8.7% contribution is what the article is saying all about. The article says that, to take it as an example, the goods and service tax figures are being used to estimate the growth. The tax buoyancy, that is goods and services sector, has been very much good because after the pandemic, the most of the industries are just working and the goods and service tax collections are going up. Friends, do you think the goods and services figures are the parameters for estimating the GDP? Definitely not. Goods and service tax is being collected from the organized sector. Those who are having established industries, from them the goods and service tax figures are being estimated and got. The article also says that there has been a shift in the demand from the organized sector to from the unorganized sector to the organized sector. Friends, the next article I am going to discuss is from the Businessline. The first editorial is the state of concern. We can see that most of the states who are just borrowing from the central government or from public are or from the external agencies are not just spending those borrowings into the developmental expenditure. The developmental expenditure is suffering. For example, the state of Punjab, it is the highest, one of the highest borrowers. However, the expenditure on the expenditure on public spending is very much minimal. Why that is the case? Because the revenues, the tax revenues are not matching with the kind of borrowings. The interest expenditure on the borrowings is very much high, and therefore the most of the borrowings, the most of the tax revenues are being used for just funding the interest expenditure on the huge borrowings they are making. And the next major expenditure which the governments or the state governments are facing is that they are spending much on the salaries of the government employees. So the Fiscal Responsibility and Budgetary Management Act prescribes the ratio of debt to GSDP, that is the gross domestic product of the states, that is the whole, the value of the whole goods and produced in goods and services produced in a state. This ratio, the debt to the GSDP ratio, must be limited to 25%, and the FRBM also requires it should be brought down to 20% by 2023. However, for most of the third states, it is above 33.5%, my dear friends. This FRBM borrowings are being conducted, my dear friends. The states have to report to Reserve Bank of India on its weekly, on its monthly borrowings, and the Reserve Bank of India publishes a gazette saying that this much amount has to be allotted to the states. That is taken by the central government as a reference figure, and the central government releases funds to the states. Friends, the next article I am going to discuss from the Businessline is the structure for MSMEs should change. Presently, the MSMEs skill structure is demand driven. When the MSMEs, the medium, the micro and the small industries demand such kind of training and such kind of skill sets, the government is providing the skills required for the MSMEs through the ITIs, that is industrial training institutes. So the demand side, the demand pulling training has to stop. Both the demand side training and the supply side training, government must be prepared to put forward some supply side training structures. That is, the government should support the necessary skills required for the MSMEs by studying the requirements, the skill requirements of MSMEs. Friends, I hope you are able to understand. Demand side of training is that when the MSME requests to the government that this skill set is required, then government jumps and introduces some training structure in the ITIs, and from there the students are being trained, and then the skilled persons come to the MSMEs to work. Why the supply side training is necessary is that often it is seen that the demand based training structure is not helping the MSMEs much. It goes on raising demand, it goes on raising the training demand every now and then, and every now and then one cannot return to ITIs and study and then come back and work. So the supply side factors should be very much equipped for the future MSME skill set. The article prescribes three kinds of models to be adopted here. One is public partnership model. Public partnership PPP model is the government and the industries should come together. The industrial clusters means the cluster of the group of manufacturing companies should come together and then provide the training structure. ILFS, a company, has done this recently. There is also the case of Tripura Timber Board. Tripura Timber Board has also just done this, because the students are selected and then the training is provided along with the government initiative and then sent to the industries. Then next model is industry ITI model. That is, the industry leaders, the industry experts and the ITI vocational training institutes must come together and think about the training structure of the future skilled employees. So this structure is the second one. Then there is the German model. German model has the dual vocational training structure. That is both the public private partnership and the ITI industry model, as we discussed now. Recently, the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship has introduced this dual-based German model in automobile industries. So this is giving kind of, that is the best model which the article is saying, and it helps to develop the skill of existing employees also. Then the article discusses the draft MSME policy of 2022. The draft MSME policy of 2022 just emphasizes on district level training being provided to the employees. The district level training is being provided in under the aegis of District Industry Center. The District Industry Center should work in partnership with the ITIs and then train the workers. So the employees and workers should be trained for the required skill set required for the MSME industry. Recently, it has been seen that the poor training structure has contributed to the poor skill set among the workers and the employees in the MSME sector. So this the MSME training structure of policy of 2022 must pave the way for necessary changes in the MSME training, is what the article says. Friends, the next article from the Businessline which I am going to discuss is cutting crude oil import bill is not easy. In the 2015 Urja Sangam 2015, Prime Minister emphasized the need to decrease the import bill from 77% of the total oil bill to 67% in 2022. However, it is seen that it has increased to 85%. This is a startling figure. We are not able to reduce the import bills. The focus had to be on the domestic exploration of oil. As Arun Jaitley had pointed out earlier, that the domestic exploration of oil has to increase. More and more oil fields have to be explored, and so that the domestic production just reduces the dependence on import. We are always living in the kind of pressure from the OPEC group, that is oil producing exporters group, and we are always at the receiving end of their pressures. In India, the daily use of oil is 5 million barrels per day, and India is the only country which serves 80 million people in the petrol pumps. The article says that we have to move to alternative energy sources. That is, what if we consider the renewable energy sector? The renewable energy sector, in the renewable energy sector comes the solar energy and the wind energy. The windmills are almost dying now, because the reasons for dying of the windmill is that it has not been properly exploited, and the windmill industry is reeling under crisis because of the kind of incentives not being provided, and they are not able to just get their dues settled. Lots of dues have been there, and this is not settled. Then the alternative is the solar energy. Solar energy is the proliferating field now. More and more solar panels are being just imported, and more distribution of solar panels is happening in India now. However, the wind energy is the only alternative source of renewable energy which is balancing the grid. Balancing the grid means the capacity, the exploring capacity of India's electric energy is being balanced by the windmills, so that we can have the adequate capacity satisfied in our energy needs. Then it is the only balancing act, or the wind energy is the only balancing act which is balancing the thermal power plants and the hydroelectric power plants. The total consumption needs of the consumers, the electric consumers in India is being balanced by the wind energy. When we have balanced thus the power needs of the country with the wind energy, we can explore more and more on the solar energy. The COP26, that is climate protocol, also prescribes move to the green energy. India has certain targets to be met by 2030. That is, the green energy has to be achieved. The exploration of green energy, the exploitation of green energy, and the renewable energy sector has to be more and more exploited. The burning of coal and the burning of fuels is very much damaging to the ecosystem, and the ecological, the environment will be polluted. So the move to the renewable sources of energy helps us a lot, is what the article is saying all about. My dear friends, I have come to the conclusion of today's discussion. I will meet you tomorrow with some more topics of discussion. Tomorrow I will come with the science and technology column, Hindu, and till then, take care. Bye, my dear.